President Biden hit the campaign trail over the weekend, visiting South Carolina ahead of the state's primary and delivering some of his most direct attacks of Donald Trump yet.
By the way, have you noticed he's a little confused these days? He apparently can't tell the difference between Nikki Haley and Nancy Pelosi. Well, as commander-in-chief, I look at veterans completely differently than Donald Trump. Think about this, especially here in South Carolina, a proud military state. Donald Trump, when he was commander-in-chief, refused to visit a cemetery, U.S. cemetery outside of Paris for fallen American soldiers. And he referred to those heroes, and I quote, as suckers and losers. He actually said that. He said that. How dare he say that? How dare he talk about my son and all of us like that? Look, I call them patriots and heroes. The only loser I see is Donald Trump.
Joining us now from the White House, correspondent for Politico and co-author of the playbook, Eugene Daniels. And Eugene, you were at President Biden's Brooklyn Baptist event in South Carolina over the weekend. What stood out to you?
Yeah, I think, I was traveled with the president from here, South Carolina and back. And what was really interesting is kind of the excitement that was with these black voters, both we went to the barbershop, we went to a lunch event, we went to a church, and obviously this first in the nation primary dinner that the South Carolina Democrats were having. And there was a lot more excitement. And you can kind of, you've heard from Democrats and us asking the Biden campaign, why do you guys feel so good about the black vote when we're looking at polls and looking a little shaky? These kinds of events are why, right? These kind of events where you're hearing 4 more years chants come up unprompted, where you are hearing a call and response back and forth to what the president was saying when he's talking about promises made, promises kept, but also you could hear it in the clip you just played, them talking back and forth about Donald Trump and their kind of hate of him, frankly, when I talked to a lot of the folks there. There was obviously Dean Phillips was also at that dinner. He went up. There was no one really paying attention to him, so much so a few times he had to say, I'm up here, show me some respect over and over and over again. And even someone who was sitting at a Dean Phillips table, who was invited by Dean Phillips, said he's for Biden. So it shows you the kind of support that he has there in South Carolina. But they have to figure out, the campaign, a way to take that excitement, that support from South Carolina and move it into these other states in the general election, right, like Georgia, and also make sure that young voters care about him just as much as a lot of those older voters did. When I talked to young voters, they brought up the same things we always hear from them. What's happening in Israel and Gaza right now. They talked about how that was upsetting for them. They talked about their need for more student loan movement, but gave the president credit for doing that. So they know the kinds of things that are happening and what the president is doing. They want to see more.
Eugene, I think we can safely predict that President Biden will defeat Dean Phillips to become the Democratic Party's nominee for president this year. But it would beyond the courting the black vote so important for this administration. The president and the vice president were both out on the road. She was out in Nevada, and they really stepped up their attacks on Donald Trump as well, really trying to draw those contrasts, as we just played there, about presidential conduct, about fitness for office, and as well as on key issues like abortion. Tell us a little more about what they're trying to do.
Yeah, they're trying to draw this contrast to make this a choice election. They don't want it to be a referendum on the 4 years of the Biden administration. They want it to give voters, hey, it's either us or him, right? That is what they are trying to do. And they had been being pushed by Democrats, outside Democrats, and even some of their allies to do more of that. We are finally seeing a real campaign. I think after Iowa and New Hampshire and the votes we saw there and what we're expecting to see in South Carolina on the Republican side, they have clearly made a decision decision that it is time to go at him full force and to do it for a long time. There is a feeling within the campaign that while these numbers aren't great, they're looking at the same polling we are on the matchup between Donald Trump and Joe Biden in November. But what they're saying is, when people really start paying attention, they're going to remember the kind of chaos of the Trump presidency, and what they're doing now is trying to lay the groundwork for that at this point. Like, remember the kinds of things that he did and said while Donald Trump is going in and out of courtrooms and telling the American voter, you have a choice to make here, right? This is not you may not like me, but for the Biden campaign, the other guy is worse, right? That is something they have to do, but also something that they are very cognizant of, even though it's a choice election between two people, technically, the third party threat out there. And we're going to see a lot of movement over that in the next few months. Politico's Eugene Daniels, thank you as always. We appreciate it. And come